Welcome to All the Answers, a podcast based out of Provision Church in Monroe, North Carolina, where we answer college students and young adults' questions from a biblical perspective. My name's Cole. I'm the college pastor here. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome, guys, back to the All the Answers podcast. Today, I'm here with, I'm Miles Malloy, and I'm here with
Pastor Cole.
Mark Navy.
Let's go. All right. So today, we are going to be talking about the election, and not predestination, but the government election. So, yeah. All right. Let's jump into the first question. And here's what it is. Do Christians have a biblical imperative to vote and be active participants in government today, especially in a democratic system, which we are? Are there specific scripture passages or examples from the early church that might guide us in this responsibility? What do y'all think?
You want to tackle it first, Mark?
Yeah, maybe even a clarifying question. Maybe even a clarifying question would be biblical imperative. Do you think if something's a biblical imperative, then it's sinful not to do it? Is that what we're talking about with biblical imperative, or are we just saying like this is important?
Does it rise to the level of a command?
Right.
Is that what you're getting at?
Are we being disobedient? Are we dishonoring God by not voting? I guess is that the question?
That is
Okay.
the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say no. I think if you don't vote, it's not necessarily sinful. I would say if you're a Christian and you don't vote, I think you're really unwise. I think it's like, why are you wasting that opportunity when you could be voting, when you could have a say in there? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what you think. I mean, I don't think I have to be right on that. That's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the issue, because there's no scripture, because clearly they weren't living in a democratic society where they had that privilege. I mean, Paul was living in the time of the Roman Empire, so it was pretty clear, like, either he submitted to the law or he didn't. So you see this general principle of, hey, I'm going to submit to the government authorities so long as it keeps me, where I can keep preaching the gospel and living my life as a citizen of heaven. Well, but when it comes to it, I think the main argument for you should vote as a Christian is if you have that freedom and opportunity, which for much of history has been off the table, then you should take it. And so it would be very unwise and almost a slap in the face to the freedom as we know it to not do that.
There's been a lot of people who have sacrificed a ton
Yeah.
to make that freedom available to us. The fact that we have a chance to speak into who is leading us is huge. Legitimately, hundreds of thousands of people have died so that we could have that opportunity. So I agree. I think there is some like, why wouldn't you take that opportunity that's been so greatly given to you?
Yeah, I think wisdom would say if you have that opportunity, then being a good steward of the roles God's given you in society as a citizen. I've heard it said, I forget who, but Christians should be the best citizens ever because we should be living upright and godly lives, but also really providing that biblical worldview. And so for us to neglect that would be to not enter into a realm where God wants us to be active, preaching to the public square and to the world. But voting is just, I guess, one freedom we have. So I think it's more of a wisdom issue versus a biblical imperative.
That's good.
If a Christian came to me and said, yeah, I'm just not voting, I think a word that comes to mind would be like admonishment. I would admonish that person. What are you doing? Vote, man. Like, be a part of making good decisions, because good government is a blessing to men, right? Like, government is meant to be protecting of people, but bad government is a curse. And I think God has in part blessed America with the voting system that we have so that Christians can help be a benefit to that country by installing government officials that will be a blessing to our country by ruling well, rather than installing government officials that are a curse that rule poorly. So it's a way, you're exactly right, that we get to be good citizens and bless our neighbors by helping put men and women in office who serve well.
Yeah, just kind of add on. I think another way to think about that is the weight of the vote too. Because let's just say theoretically, every evangelical Christian doesn't vote in some sense, then you're leaving the weight to the non-Christian or secular parts of our society to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And likely what you might have over time is you're going to get bad leaders who aren't espousing a biblical worldview, which we're not expecting that anyway, like from our world leaders or government leaders. But at least that pressure would be from that Christian base. If we have that freedom, then let's use that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. I think the Bible does make it pretty clear that we're supposed to be, as Christians, agents of change and trying to push the bill forward for, human rights and loving people well. So I did have this thought in the middle of us talking, just to be clear. I've never voted before. This will be my first time, and you guys have voted how many times?
This will be my third election, presidential election.
This is my fourth election. I had Obama, McCain, Obama.
So 08. You started in 08?
08, that's right, 08, yeah. Yeah, you can do the math on that.
So it would be your fifth
Romney.
election.
Yeah, okay, fifth election.
There we go.
Yeah.
So just a little
You
tidbit
kind of
there.
calculate our ages.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, and here's just a follow-up. What about the Christian that says, my vote doesn't matter? In our election system, I think that is something that a lot of people debate back and forth. What are some quick thoughts about that?
Well, you have to recognize your vote is on multiple levels, especially in every election, even the midterms. You're voting for different levels of government and how it works. I mean, you're not just voting for the top of the ticket. You got your statewide races and even your local races. And so your vote does matter, especially if it's an informed vote down to the local level, who you're putting on the school boards. And I mean, that stuff matters, especially if you got kids in public school or other areas that will affect you. So I think that statement is just misinformed. I think, on maybe a large scale, like the presidential election, if you live in a state that's just like, leans one way or the other, then you might think, oh, it doesn't even matter if I get out. But I still think having the discipline to exercise that right is important. And it shows you're trying to be well informed and being a good steward of the opportunity.
Yeah, your vote matters. It's just stats. It's just math. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, a penny in my bank account doesn't feel like much, but I'm really glad all my pennies are there. It adds up. And so that's what you're right. If you don't vote, it probably won't matter. But if everyone feels that way, it's really defeating. Yeah. So each one of us has a small responsibility. It's very theological. Like, who am I in God's plan? I mean, who is someone who doesn't live very long in God's plan? They still matter. They still are meaningful. They still have dignity. Like, God has given you this small piece in your life, and part of it is voting. It's small, but make the most of it.
That's really good. Yeah, I really like what you said, Cole, about voting on the smaller level. I think everyone talks about the election when it comes to presidents, but we often miss school board, mayor, governor, all that stuff. That's really good. Okay, here's another question. So, and this is a big one. So, given the current polarization in politics, how should Christians approach voting when neither political party fully aligns with biblical values? Should Christians prioritize certain issues like the sanctity of life or social justice over when casting their vote? So should they hold those more important versus smaller things? And then how do we navigate these conflicts of conscience?
That's good. There is always going to be some level of triage. They talk about theological triage, but I guess it might translate into your vote to
political triage.
So for the Christian,
and what's triage mean?
Triage is just attending to the matters that are most urgent.
Yeah.
So like, theological triage, you're talking about, first level doctrines like the divinity of Christ and inerrancy of the word. So if you don't hold to those, then can you even call yourself a Christian?
Yeah.
Kind of idea.
Yeah.
So then on a political level, like what issues should matter most to Christians? That is the key question. And you brought some up. I mean, I think the sanctity of life it has to be primary in how we vote, because we live in a society right now that is not upholding a basic human right for millions of humans. Like literally, biblically, when we look at it, life starts from conception. And so for us to deny life for babies in the womb is akin to murder. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. So that would be an issue for me. That would be on that top tier.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because Christians are really blessed that God has given us faith that doesn't depend on government. That's not true for every religion. In Islam, like a kind of final form of Islam is that your government has to submit to that. And what's beautiful about the truth is that God says, I'm above that. Like I don't have to have your government being on my side for you to be my child. And so like our Christians have lived in governments with wicked and terrible rulers all throughout time. And I remember some of my first elections thinking it's just not fair that I have to vote for one of two people who I don't think are exemplary in like following Jesus and promoting policy that honors God. It felt really wrong to me. And honestly, in my time, I have voted on the presidential level. I agree with you. I mean, the reason you vote is not just for president. You should be voting especially for your local elections. They mean so much, and you need to research and have opinions on that. But especially on the national level, I've had protest votes where I've written in names, not because it's like, I don't want my party to think that I support this candidate. Like, that's not a good direction. And there's other times where I've kind of held my nose and voted for what I thought was a better candidate. So I think, both things are possible. When you're looking at this election, I think it's fair to look at our candidates. And I'm thinking very practically for the 24 election, right? I think it's very, very okay for us as Christians to look at this election, and we don't judge hearts, we don't judge souls. I don't know the spiritual end for Kamala or Donald, but like right now I'm looking at them and I'm saying these are two wicked, evil people. Like their actions and their words match that. And I think that's harsh, but it's true, especially like we're reading through Isaiah as a church right now. We're preaching through that. And that's the way God talks about governments. That's the way he talks about it in Psalms. I mean, that's biblical language. And right now, those are your choices for leaders. And so for us, do we cast a vote for one of those two? I think that you can. I think if someone who is not a godly person can still help advance what we believe is human flourishing in our society, I think there's freedom in that, because we're not, again, voting to establish God's kingdom on earth. We're voting for improving society. But I think it's tough, and it's a matter of conscience that there will be Christians who look at this and say, I cannot punch a ticket for someone who speaks and acts so far away from what God has commanded for us. And more power to you. And I think there's people who are going to look at that and say, I know that these two people are wicked, but the reality is, and this is just in our system. I mean, every system throughout time has had to approach these concepts uniquely. But in our time and in our system, the reality is that one of these two major candidates is going to win for president. Now, again, if you didn't vote for that and voted for all the lower elections, that's beautiful and good and helpful. Do that. There's really good people to vote for locally. But still, you might look at that and say, I know practically one of these two people are going to win. And I think it's better to help this better person who has policies and positions that are going to increase human flourishing. I think it's better for them to win. I think you're within a spiritually sound position to vote for a better candidate of two bad candidates.
Yeah, I think conscience is a good way to frame it, because it's really the question of, for the Christian, will there ever be the perfect candidate?
No.
No, absolutely not. And we have to recognize that. And so then it comes down to the question of, it might be more pragmatic decision to vote. I know the values aren't 100% what I want, but these issues are top tier for me. This candidate leans this way on that, so they're going to get my vote, even though it's not ideal. So you're really facing idealism versus, in some sense, especially with the right to life issue, is incrementalism. So is one side going to push? Because, you're thinking about, okay, with the right to life for the unborn, ideally for us, that, like, every baby would be protected, like, because it's the right to life. But we're not operating in a system that is advocating for that. Even on a statewide level right now, the votes have gone the other way. And so for the Christian, is it more of an incremental approach of, okay, how can I get closer to the biblical worldview in my vote with this candidate or that candidate? So it's really tough. And I agree with Mark. Like, it ultimately is a conscience issue, and you can land on either side of that, of refraining from a vote or casting a vote.
I realized the triage issue I didn't speak to at all, and I would just agree with that. I think when you're triaging things, you look back at Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Life is first in that three, and it's not an accident that life is first in the three. And so if you read platforms right now, like the Democratic platform very carefully uses words like reproductive freedoms or reproductive health care. But like what that platform is getting at is abortion. Abortion is taking away the life of an unborn child. The Republican platform is a little more clear with that, calls it the sanctity of right to life. The Republican platform is not strong on that this year. I think in a lot of ways, the Republican Party feels like they've done their job and now they can be done with it. And so the Republican Party is clear with the language more so than the Democrats. I think they use a lot of euphemisms. But Christians for a while have been, I think in the last few elections, kind of almost slapped on the hand for saying like, you are one party voter or one issue voters. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you were coming to my house and saying, all right, every year you've got to sacrifice one of your children to our, it would be like, that's issue is the biggest issue to us. Like we don't want that.
Yeah.
And so I think there are issues that are significant enough that we can be one issue voters. So that's what we've always said. I think a lot of Christians for a long time have said that is the issue for us, is that abortion needs to be put on the table, called what it is, that it's taking the life, it's murdering, it's ending the life of an unborn child. And then from there, you get into a lot of, I think, specialized issues. I think economics is really important. Economics is really debatable. We live in a culture that has basically accepted that capitalism is the right way. There's a lot of pushback on that. We actually are not a capitalist country where, our market is mixed. So there's socialistic pieces of what our economy is. So even people who are like capitalism all the way, most of them would say like we actually believe in some socialistic views. So there's a lot of debate in some of those smaller issues. And that's where even stuff like right now on both platforms, they talk about racial equality, they talk about immigration, and they talk about those things very differently. And language does matter. The way we talk about people, the dignity of people does matter. But yeah, for me right now, I think protecting unborn children from murderous mothers and doctors that's the goal of government, is to protect people. If our government is not protecting people, then it's really not a good government. That's really biblically, that's what we see. So that's why I think most Christians seeing life biblically, that every person is made in the image of God from conception, that David talks about being known in the womb, Jeremiah does too. That should be a top issue for us, and that we shouldn't let that be dismissed because culturally it's like, well, of course the Christian would think that. There's a reason that Christians think that, and it's not a political issue for us. It's significant.
Another issue I might add, just very briefly, is we got to think about our lives here missionally. Like, what allows us to spread the gospel with as much freedom and access as possible? And I think Paul had that perspective. Like, he wanted to submit, be a good citizen to the Roman Empire so that he could be a missionary and go across all the lands. And as far as that allowed him to propel the gospel, then he was okay with like a overarching government structure. So for us, it's how are we making the best use of the time because the days are evil. And I think as far as right now, we do have way greater freedoms than most of the people in the world.
Yeah.
So how are we using that? That should be convictional for us. Like, are we using our freedom for the gospel?
Yeah. And Paul pulled the levers of government. You remember when he was being tried, and he was kind of like sneaky that he was a Roman citizen, but he let them get to a place where they were scared that they had treated a Roman citizen the way that they did. And it was a lever of government that he was using to kind of push his side. But that's a good point. I was reading through both platforms. Both platforms speak towards religious freedom. And platforms are so interesting because you'll probably hear people say, you can't just worry about the candidate, you need to vote for the platform. I was pretty unimpressed with both platforms. I don't know if you guys have spent, I'm not even putting you on the spot to say that, but both platforms are pretty unimpressive, and it's because they can be used in sound bites so easily. So they're so like surface level. Both of them talk about religious freedom. But one thing to remember is as you're thinking through voting and election, it's like verifiable facts that in a Democratic government with Barack Obama as president, there were churches in Houston that would be having their sermons collected by an agency that was like investigating them for they were just tracking, and what they were looking for was hate speech towards the LGBTQ community. And that was something that didn't get a ton of billing, but if your platform says we're for religious freedom, and then you have agencies investigating whether you're preaching the Bible about what God says about sexuality. It was also within that government that nonprofit statuses were being denied pretty heavily based on political affiliation, but also religious affiliation. So, it's just something where we should look at platforms. We also should look at history, and the media is a hard place to look for some of that. I think as you're thinking towards the election, you guys, it's kind of obvious the stuff like CNN and Fox News, like you get into some weeds on both ends of all of that. There's agendas everywhere. And so that's a really difficult part to ask God for wisdom. Like, God, help me to know what is true. Help me to discern what is right. That's important for us because you can't just trust platforms. You can't just trust words. And where are we going to have religious freedom? It's a tough thing.
Yeah, that's really good. I think what I'm taking away is like, do your research. Like, don't just rely on social media and even the news to like go and read what the platforms are saying. And I'm assuming you're saying from their websites, that's where you find.
Yeah. If you Google Republican platform, Democratic platform, the Democratic platform is much easier to find and read. The Democratic, I say Democratic platform.
Yeah.
The Republican platform is a little chaotic in its layout, but you can find them and get through them both.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple points. You made a point about just both candidates being sinful people. And what would you say to the Christian that says, I'm voting for my president, but not my pastor? That's a pretty common kind of thing to hear. So I just what are your thoughts on that? I did put you on the spot with this one.
It's true.
Yeah.
You are. I think, I'm putting it on the table. Can I just put it on the table? Is that all right? All right. I think back to 2012? 2016, when we were having 2015 Republican primaries, and Christians were voting for Trump in the primaries. And at that point, it was pretty clear that this was not a godly man. Like, he may be saying some of those things for political presence, but his history and some of his current statements, and the Republican Party is the one that's supposed to be whatever it generally is billed as the evangelical Christian party. And you did have a lot of evangelical Christians voting in those primaries where they're choosing from among Republican candidates. And that was a very common choosing up a president, not a. And it's like, yeah, but don't you want to choose a good man? Like, don't you want to choose someone that your children can look up to, that you would say, hey, you want to be like that man? And I think there is something about culture that we choose our heroes, and presidents have historically in the United States been, whether it's true or not, men who we write books about. Like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, even whether as you get more recent men, you agree or disagree with their policies, like Eisenhower, Reagan. Those are men that you think, these are guys that I want my kids to be like these guys. So we've lost something in that. I think they're right. Like, fine, if you want to take that position, I'm not going to argue with you. That's true. But I think you have to admit that you've lost something in having to say that. Like, we would be better off having men that we would be glad to have pastor us and be our president.
Yeah.
And have we ever had that perfectly? Again, no, we haven't ever had that perfectly, but it's like, man, it's just sad when you have to, that's a sign of low standards. That's not a sign of high standards.
Yeah.
I think why character matters is because character produces principle. And so if you got someone who has a bad character, they're likely only saying certain things for pragmatic value,
right,
to get the vote or because it will help them along. They know they need to do it politically or whatever. But character is, it's your conviction. It's, integrity and those things that over time should not shift. And so that's why character does matter. You can't separate it from a political candidate. And I think you've seen that, to Mark's point, 8 years ago, there was almost a real giddiness in some circles to just kind of elevate Trump to almost like Jesus's right-hand man. There's even like AI pictures and stuff of that. And I think of like the yard sign, it's like, Jesus is my savior, Trump's my president type thing. And it's like, biblically, that is already off the rail because there's only one Lord. Jesus is Lord. And so let's not elevate another human right next to him. But then I think you've seen it just over time because of the principle that is lacking, the conviction and the character. There's been shifts on things. And a lot of Christians, I think, have maybe been a little disillusioned and caught off guard at especially the right to life thing. Especially this year, Donald Trump's platform is quite ambiguous and a lot of Christians are upset. And it's like, you kind of get that when you don't have the character.
Yeah.
Imbibed.
Not going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another thing. What about policy over personality? And I know we're kind of getting at the same thing, but just to wrap this up, what do you say? What do you say to policy over personality?
Well, right now in our political world, it's really hard because of how many people there are, because of our history. It really is a cult of personality at this point. Like, I think maybe this is just my opinion, but the rise of MAGA and Donald Trump, was it not because there was some disenchantment with the political enterprise, how we've known it? And so you get this new kind of populist movement centered around a very, very, very strong personality.
Yeah.
So it is almost, right now, I think most people might be voting more on personality or hatred of a personality.
Yeah.
I heard President Trump was the first president to have like merch like that was pretty widespread. People were buying, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But Pastor Mark, you said something talking about how, there was a time where we had presidents that were great men that you write books about. I think it's important to like remember that it hasn't always, our standard for presidents has always been as low as it is now. If you just look back historically, candidates used to be pretty cordial with each other. They used to not be tearing one another down, but rather building up themselves. I've seen like a ton of debate clips of these presidents saying, hey, I actually agree with you. Here's how I would execute differently. So I just think it's interesting. We're watching just like the degrading of society when it comes to our standard for presidents.
Yeah, I think that's true in the most part, especially as you come through the 1900s. But you go back and, our politics has also been really messy in the past.
Yeah.
Like famously, we've had
Watergate.
a vice president. Well, yeah, Watergate's a good example, but we've had a vice president shoot. Aaron Burr was shot. I'm trying to think about
Hamilton.
Was he vice president? Anyway, I mean, we've had politics where people have been shot. That's what I'll say. That I mean, one famous example: this dude comes into the Senate and beats another guy to an inch within his life with his cane. He can't walk again. Like that's our politics have been really bad. Thankfully, not as bad as like France, but our politics have been messed up. And you go back to some of our first, even when we first started, the way we elected people was the first vote getter was president and the second vote getter was vice president. And often they were opposing parties. So there were times where even in your vice presidency, they hated their president. And so things have always been a little messy. I heard CNN last night. They said, this is unprecedented because they were talking about, some of the people who were in Trump's inner circle previously saying, we think he's a fascist. It's like, it's not unprecedented, dude. Like, I mean, people have said terrible stuff about people in politics since day one. And if you go back into history, politics have always been, I mean, kings getting murdered, coups, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just politics. Power corrupts, and people who love power will do whatever it takes to have it. It's just where we are. So I think we've been blessed to be a country where we've had some really great examples. But also, like, this is probably more what is par for the course. And that's what's sad, is that we've given up our great opportunity. And maybe we still get to that again. We grow through this. This is a growing pain. But America's had both. We've had great political seasons and terrible political seasons. I think that's fair.
I think to bring it down on a personal level, like the temptation would be for us to engage in that same rhetoric and
that's a great point.
Degradation. But
it's a great point.
Scripture's clear. We're to pray for our leaders and pray that God would bring peace so that the gospel may go forth. And so whoever's in power right now, God's sovereign. He turns the king's heart where he wills. And we've seen that biblically. We're seeing it in Isaiah. Like, God uses pagan kings. He uses ungodly kings to bring about his will. So that, I think the healthy mindset is, one, not to elevate a human to the standard of thinking that they're going to be like a deliverer or savior. I mean, that's a huge mistake. But then two, we cannot as Christians, and this should get personal for you, is like, what are the thoughts going through your mind as you're scrolling through social media? Are you actually engaging in some comments and things that are adding to the polarization? Because that's against what Paul would say. He says we should pray for our leaders.
Yeah. Acknowledging their wickedness is not an excuse to then treat them like trash. Acknowledging their wickedness is, in some ways, acknowledging that they're like every human being in need of a savior. And so we should treat even these wicked leaders with respect. We should honor them. I mean, I think about even Paul telling slaves to obey their masters and to, work as unto the Lord. Like, you're not just trying to make money for your masters. You should be working as unto the Lord. As citizens, I don't see how that's different for us. That in our system of government, we should be working to benefit our country, whether we like our president or not, whether we think that president is righteous or not, because we should be like Daniel in a government that ruined his life. We should be like Joseph in a government that put him in prison, and that he came out of that jail cell and helped them be the most powerful country in the world. Like, we should follow the example of the saints before us who have honored wicked men by serving God, not those wicked men.
That's good. This is all really helpful when thinking about a president. But before we move too far, so we said that it's okay to be kind of a one issue voter as a Christian. If you hold that the sanctity of life is just absolutely crucial, which we do, then it would be justifiable for that to be your main reason. I guess my follow-up question is, what about the people who their number one issue is social justice? Because I think some people would look at that as an equal, if not greater issue. What would just be some ways for us to think about that? Because that's kind of the other side.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. One of the most helpful things when we think about all these issues is to understand the different spheres God has ordained in life. And so He's ordained the family. So that's a clear institution. See it in Genesis. The man should leave his mother and father, cling fast to his wife. Two will become one flesh. You see it in Ephesians 5, almost kind of structure is Paul addresses the family. And then there's the church. So God has instituted the church to be the agent of bringing the gospel to the world. And so we have specific responsibilities to the world as the church, local churches all across the world. And then there is civil government. We see that clearly in Romans 13. Paul says there's a role for government. It's to really wield the sword and protect life, but also to be the restrainer of sin at large in society. I think where Christians get in trouble is mixing up the spheres, right? And so biblically, of course, we see that God's people are to be about justice for the fatherless, for the widows, for those the poor even. I mean, Scripture talks about that all the time. But what's the sphere that it's supposed to be mainly done in? And I think what's just happened over the course of our history, and this is just my analysis of it, Mark, you may have a different opinion, is the church has relegated that off to the government. I think that's a huge mistake. 150 years ago, the church was opening up the schools and the hospitals and providing for the poor. And we just tossed that out. And it's so sad because now you almost get a spectacle where it's like, we've just missed it. And we need to reclaim it, you know? So that would be my first thought on it. There's depths and nuances to it, of
really
course.
good.
Yeah, social justice is such a complex issue because you get to stuff like economics is a part of social justice, right? That, I mean, even right now, you would hear one side say the rich should pay their fair share. And where does that fair share go? Well, it goes to help the impoverished. That's the idea, right? But you could make an argument that the greater the free market, the greater the churnings of business, that the greater the opportunity to bring people out of poverty. So it's like, it's just a question of propaganda and belief. Like, does propaganda convince you? What has your research led you to believe? So those are hard things. I mean, even when you get into social justice about like race issues, again, a lot of that's driven by narrative as much as it is by fact. And so the hard part of the social justice question is, like right now, there is a party that says we believe, in general, not every person in the party does, but in general, there's a party that says we believe that women should be able to have abortions and end a child's life. And then the other party says we think that that is reprehensible and should not happen, and the government should protect the unborn. In social justice, both parties right now very clearly and adamantly would say we believe that people should be treated equally, that we believe people are valuable and have dignity, and that's going to be true on both sides. But the approach is going to be different. Like right now, I don't know what all gets caught up in social justice as a part of that. But like immigration, if you look at the platforms, I think like you look at Republican platform on immigration, and they have not been careful with their language. You could read their platform and very quickly believe that they think people from other countries are subhuman. I mean, I don't think they've done a good job with their language. The Democrats have done a much better job with their language, defending the dignity of immigrants, no matter whether they're migrating legally or illegally. So there's nuance there that I think does matter. But the harder part of a secondary issue like social justice is what is true, and what is your goal, and what are the things that get you to that goal. That's been historically the bigger separator in the United States, is that we have the same goal. We want people to be able to move from poverty to wealth. We want people to move from no opportunity to opportunity. Like that's kind of been the American dream kind of piece here. I think that would still be the question of social justice. Mm-hmm. It's just hard because there's different ways to get there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I think that's the hard part of that.
Yeah, that's helpful. And Cole, I really like that the church has neglected its responsibility for the widows and orphans and poor. I mean, we need to take that back. So this should be an action step too. If you're not serving in your church in those areas, like let's be doing that. Let's take that back.
Why do you think, Miles, that the church has given that up?
That's a good question. I don't know. Cole, what do you think?
Just toss it
Yeah,
around the
I mean-
little triangle here.
I mean, I think we always want to, it's easy to pass the blame, right? It's easy to say, oh, it's the government's fault. Like it requires work, it requires sacrifice, it requires you giving up your time, your money. I mean, it's so much easier to just say, hey, government, like give out stimulus checks, give out whatever, and then I don't have to do anything. Like you give off all your responsibility. And I mean, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. We're just lazy.
Yeah, I mean, our culture has been skewing more towards the privatization of individuals and just individualism. So, if you're not faced with community needs on a regular basis, like in my neighborhood, I mean, I think it's pretty common now where you wouldn't have to meet any neighbors if you didn't want to, and nobody really think that's weird.
Yeah.
But generations ago, like you had to be a good neighbor, and it was day in day out you're interacting with people, so those needs came across more. I think that because of even the move more to technology spaces, like that's where most people are interacting, you're just not seeing those opportunities in that face to face. That's one side of it, I would think. So
yeah, I think whenever you hear people going on like mission trips to just really poor places, they're always like just so struck by, I mean, how broken people's lives are. And I think in America, we're able to live most of our day-to-day life without seeing that. So of course we're not going to be pressed with caring for the poor and the broken when we can go most of our life without thinking about it.
Yeah. I think we've become very good at prioritizing our comfort in such a way that the needs of people we hide away. You think about some of the neediest groups in our society right now, and I think about the elderly, and we hide them away in nursing homes. You think about the mentally ill, like especially severely, we hide them away in like clinics and residential facilities. I mean, those are two of the most hard-hit groups in our society right now, and government is better at hiding those things away from us. We pay some people to take care of that stuff, where if the churches were doing it, like we'd have to be involved hands-on, and that would take us out of those comfortable places and put us in like, oh man, human suffering is around us, it's close to us. It's easier to let professionals handle it.
yeah, I just kind of want to circle back to the like social justice thing really quick. I think it is really important to flesh out that you have to get to the underlying philosophies and really movements that have brought about where we are today. And so it is undeniable that a big section and push for the social justice, you have to even define what that means.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Christians have to be very, very careful to define that. I prefer to use biblical justice so that I'm just grounding myself in what does the Bible uphold, what does God uphold, because it's undeniable that a big push for the current social justice movement is undergirded by, naturalistic philosophies, and I would say Marxism to an extent. Now, it's a buzzword, but it's true that the defining reality of how you filter everything is who's oppressed and who are the oppressors. And so then the goal of life is to, make the oppressed free. So how do you do that? Well, you got to take power away from the oppressors. So you view all of life through that lens, and you're going to start taking things personally or seeing it more in society because you have that filter on, right? Versus biblically, we got to zero ourselves in. One, I'm a sinner in need of God's grace. Individually, I've sinned. Sin comes from my heart, whether it is racism or prejudice against the poor, whatever. So sin starts there, and I have to get my relationship with God right first, and that's only through Christ dying for me. But then the gospel affects how I interact with other people, and so God's forgiveness of me, because I've been forgiven so much of a debt, should drive me to reconcile in whatever way with other people. And so if you have someone who's a non-believer, doesn't know the gospel, then of course they're going to have some sort of philosophy that guides how they view race relations or poverty. It's inescapable. The question is, for Christians, do we have the right one? Are we allowing outside secular philosophies govern how we view these issues? both personally and on a government scale.
Yeah, that's good. This kind of brings me to the last kind of point. So in all of this, mainstream media has just really polarized all these issues and made people against each other. So the call in the gospel and in the Bible is to love one another. So how do we love one another well when the world and mainstream media makes election issues all about, the other side this, the other side that? And then how do we remain unified as believers around the gospel? And then how can we be driven by the gospel in our interactions with non-believers?
I might just be really quick here. I might just say, why don't you take a break from social media and invest in the people who are actually around you in your life? Maybe do that for the next few months or whatever, and start to see how the time we spend on these platforms and stuff can affect our views of everyday life versus who's God put around me and how do I influence them with the gospel. That's really practical, but I would say that could be huge, just building healthy habits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about the fact that our fight is not against flesh and blood, but it's against principalities and spiritual forces. Like, for us, it's easy to see other people, especially that vote differently than us, as an enemy. That look, you're ruining this country. Like, your beliefs are ruining the future for my kids. I think that's a real position. And sometimes you'll hear pastors talk about, like, we need to not let a donkey or an elephant, like, we don't need to worship a donkey or elephant. We need to worship the lamb. And it's like, that's good. But a lot of times that comes off really surface level. People are like, well, I don't know anybody who's like looking to the Republican Party for hope. But I think where that comes to the surface is how we treat people who think and vote differently than we do on these issues. And for the Christian, it should be really simple, that we should be looking at each person with compassion as someone who's been made in the image of God, who Jesus has come to save. He's come to seek and save the lost. And so if our neighbor is someone who voted differently than us and is a Christian, then it's sometimes even easier to make them an enemy, because it's like, well, you already know Jesus and you're making a mistake. Like, what a foolish person. Like, I don't have time for you. But that's where if we do believe there's freedom of conscience in this, that the Bible doesn't prescribe one candidate over the other, it gives us the ability to see that person really truly as a brother. And even if they were making a mistake, even if their vote was sinful, then they're still someone that we should strive to have unity with. If the person's not a believer, then even more so, it's a reason for us, even in disagreement, to say, hey, like, I'm not here because you voted the way I did. I'm here and I care about you because we have the same creator. Like, I want you to live forever with Jesus. Like, that's my hope and heart for you. And sometimes we can get so bogged down in politics that we can get hot about it. We can get heated about it, right? Like, it's not a bad thing to get passionate about politics. That's good. Like, if you raise your voice a little bit talking about it, but to come back down to, in the end, like, if you vote differently than I do, or if you don't vote at all, I still love you. I still want what's best for you. I still hope that even if I think you're wrong and your candidate wins, that I end up being wrong and good things happen. Like, I want human flourishing. I don't want just to be right all the time.
Yeah, maybe this is a little punchy, but Jesus, he didn't say go make disciples of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party.
Right.
I think we can view it that way, right? Like, if you know that information that somebody voted opposite, it can taint your perception of them. But it's like, we should be making disciples. And so the reason I said maybe you should get off of social media is because you've been on it so much, you're starting to filter every single person, this side, that side, this side, that side, versus seeing them as, first of all, in need of the gospel. So how do my interactions with them, what do they really need? They need Jesus.
Yeah.
And the church is to make disciples of all nations, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like, that is our commission, not to be political activists and converts. Not that that's bad to get passionate, like you're saying, Mark, but it's not our primary role as citizens of heaven first.
Right. It is difficult in our political climate. Every political climate is not the same. But right now, it is a difficult thing in our political climate because I think there is an association of Christianity and political party. And there is a Christianity for the Republicans and a Christianity for the Democrats. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
And so then it can feel like sometimes, even if we're in a political season talking about Christ, that we're coming from it with a political angle. And so I think there's some real difficulty in trying to hash that out and be aware of the context that we're in to talk about Jesus and to talk about party, because sometimes we can be passionate about our party and people won't see us as like, okay, he's thinking through politics. They're going to see us as a Christian who is captured by their political party. And so we have to be careful. And that what that can do, the two angles on that is, one, it can make us disengage. And I think I felt that in myself over the last few years, is I'd rather disengage than be seen as a part of a political party exercising my faith out of that politics. Then the other thing, another way you can, and I think is errant, I think that's errant. I think another errant direction is you go just all in. Well, if I can't separate it, then just, it's like, I give up and I'm just going to be all in on, whatever my party says. I think we do have to live in some tension and work hard to balance. Like, I recognize I'm in a political context. I realize there's nothing I can do about that. I'm just going to try to be as faithful as possible to honor Christ, promote the gospel, and live faithfully within this government as I can.
Yeah, that's really good. I think practically what I'm taking away from this conversation has been that the call should be for missions. The call in our lives is to bring the gospel to lost people. And then in thinking about the election, be extremely prayerful. Be extremely diligent in reading God's word and staying engaged in church and engaged in just the world around you. And then just to love people. Through all this, the world is not loving people, but Christians should be known and kind of separated from everyone else because of their love for people. So I'm thankful for you guys listening and sticking around for this little bit of a longer episode. If you have any questions just about anything we've talked about, we'd love for you to send those in. And if you have any, questions on a different topic, please fill out the form on Spotify. Thanks again for being here, and thanks for listening.